Welcome again, everybody, to another episode of the ShopNotes Podcast. This is episode number 57. I'm your host, Phil Huber, joined by Logan Whitmer and John Doyle, as always. Today's episode is Start at the Finish, or Finish to Start. We're going to talk about finishing and a variety of other topics, so I hope you enjoy the show.
This episode of the ShopNotes Podcast is brought to you by Woodsmith Magazine. Woodsmith Magazine has been the trusted source for all your woodworking information for over 40 years. From tips and techniques to furniture projects to shop projects, you'll find it all at Woodsmith Magazine. Subscribe today at woodsmith.com.
I see someone's table saw cart got painted.
Dang right it did. Becky Kralachek rode me hard enough to get it in gear and start finishing it. So she's been on me to
she's
get
calling
that
you
film.
out on Facebook now too.
I know.
Yeah.
So
Under the Woodsmith name.
I know.
Right.
I know. That's all right.
And then John had drawers in there.
Yep.
Was that the top for something too from yours, or was that somebody else?
No, that's I think this is the top for that coffee table that Steve Johnson's building.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So some actual real work is still going on here.
So what you're telling me is that the finish room has more than just personal projects.
Right. Some business projects.
Well, yeah, the table saw cart is completely for business. I mean,
Right.
Well, that's true.
kind of.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to live right here, so.
Yeah, and those drawers are for none of your business, so
Yeah, that's right.
don't worry about it.
It's for Nunya.
Yep.
All right. So before we get to the main topic for today, I thought we'd take a little dive into, the odd things that you think about when you're working on a woodworking project.
Yep, okay, this could go really deep.
Right. So, I don't remember if it was last episode or 2 episodes ago, we were talking about tool buying, techniques, what kind of limits you put on yourself. And I think this is something that kind of came to me, was how you use your tools depends a lot on how you perceive them, like what you can, in terms of what you can do with them.
Okay.
For example, one of my favorite power tools is the bandsaw.
Sure.
And I think there's a lot of folk that look at a bandsaw as essentially a jacked up stationary jigsaw.
John's raising his hand for everybody listening.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more that you can do with a bandsaw, in my personal opinion, and it depends on what you view that tool as. Along those same lines, I feel like there are also certain tools that just go together.
Yeah.
Like peanut butter and jelly, or Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like a bandsaw and a thickness planer walk through the park holding hands.
See, that's not the two tools I would pair together. But
Yeah.
that's just me. I'd put a bandsaw with a lathe.
See?
So,
And again,
yeah,
it's about conception on how you
Exactly.
conceive these tools and what they're used for. Because to me, I think of it as, the bandsaw is the thicknessing tool, and the planer is the surfacing tool.
Okay.
And certainly in our shop, where it's a communal shop and someone else is paying for the blades, we've
Yeah.
taken 8/4 stock and ground it down to 3/4 for projects for the magazine, just to get smooth, flat, straight, square, all that kind of stuff.
Does some of this come from being thrifty, though, and resawing to save material?
Yes, but I think I'm going to say that it goes back to how you conceive what a tool can do.
Sure.
Because for the longest time, the guys that were in the shop just used a planer to grind down everything.
Yep.
Turn it all to chips. When Dana Myers came as shop craftsman a number of years ago, he made deliberate choices when he needed thinner material that he would resaw it first and then go to the planer, rather than, just, blowing that all away into shavings and chips,
Well, and to be fair, it's a whole lot easier to replace a bandsaw blade than it is to change the knives on a planer. So you might as well get that waste out of the way with a thing that's easier to fix when it breaks.
Yeah. And I found that it's a lot easier not to change out the dust collector barrel as often.
Yeah.
Right.
By resawing rather than just turning it all into chips, like you said. So
usually what I do is I'll do a bunch of stuff on the planer, and then before I leave, I'll take a couple of handfuls of some walnut shavings that I have, just throw them on top. Logan gets blamed for it, and I'm out.
That's true.
It's a setup.
Ouch. Yeah. Ouch. Fair? It's fair.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. So anyway, along those lines, I'd be interested to know what either you guys or viewers would think are like two tools that kind of are hand in glove that, in order to maximize the use of one, it's a good idea to have the other one with you. And your point exactly, that's something I never would have thought of, bandsaw and lathe, just because I don't turn that often.
Yeah, well, and see, that's... I could go like bandsaw and lathe, or I could go chainsaw and lathe.
Sure.
Just because you need one or the other to turn not necessarily to turn a log into a turn project, but something like that. In my shop, I would say I'm going to put my shooting board as a tool category. So my low angle jack and my shooting board, you can't have one without the other. I can't in my shop.
Sure.
That's something I have started doing recently, is shooting everything with my shooting plane, with my low angle jack. And it's amazing. It's amazing how well a good shooting board and a good hand plane, a good sharp hand plane, can really clean up and accurately square up and trim parts to length. So.
All right. That's fair.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
For me, it's definitely the jointer and planer, because it's like if you're going to use rough lumber and you're going to go to all the trouble to flatten it and, get it to thickness, you kind of need both of those. Otherwise, you can just buy, the pre-milled stuff off the shelf. And because really with just a planer, it's not flattening anything. It's not preventing it from being warped or cupped or any of that. So kind of need both.
Okay.
That's just what I found.
So what happens when a jointer and a planer get locked in quarantine together, and all of a sudden you come out with something like our Rikon? That's a combo machine.
Jointer, planer, yeah.
Right. Now it's just one
so
tool.
What goes with that?
Yeah.
The unholy offspring.
Yeah. Then you mix it
Then
in
a dust collector goes with it. Yeah. That's what goes with it.
Right.
And then I was talking to you guys earlier today about, Logan and I are trying to semi-frantically finish a couple of projects before a self-imposed deadline of next week.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And
is it really?
Yeah. 10 days away, dude.
Okay.
February 20th, is that what your deadline was?
Yes.
Yes.
So one of the things that I've learned about myself is I get to a certain point where a project is almost done, and mentally I start getting the shakes to want to start 1 to 5 other projects. That I start flipping through my shop notebook to see about other projects that are kind of on the list, or all of a sudden I'm stopping to gaze a little bit at my lumber rack, or something where it's like, hey, I was going to start on, because I'm trying to figure out why that is. Is it psychological that I don't really want the project to be over? Or is it that I know I'm going to be done, so I might as well get started on something else? So I've mentally checked out of it, or
Well, so here's what I think. I think that, at least for me, this might not be for everybody, but for me, starting a project is one of the funnest parts of it.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, for sure.
Like that beginning prep, planning, I love all that. So that's where I could see that. Like just the endless possibilities of how this project could go, how it could turn out. Like I love that wonderment you get.
Yeah.
So that's where I would say I get excited to start another project as soon as something's wrapping up, because finish line's in sight and I know I get to jump right back in.
Yeah. And a project you haven't started yet is perfect.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because you have no obligation.
Well, yeah, and you haven't hosed up anything yet on it either.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and usually the stuff that you're conceptualizing doesn't have a deadline. It's just kind of a thought, and you can start it and whatever. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah.
Awesome.
So all that being said, is I'm looking pretty good on how my project is finishing up here, and I'm excited about seeing it done.
Yeah.
Also to the point that just on the other end of the bench from where John is talking right now, I have parts for the next project gluing up.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So
jumping in head first.
All right.
Head first or feet first?
Christmas 2021. Let's go.
That one's more like birthday 2021. So.
All right.
Although probably not a bad idea to start thinking about Christmas ideas. So.
Mm-hmm.
Logan says Santa shoots an elf at some point here.
Yep.
Okay. So our main topic for today's episode is finishing. And it's something I don't think we've talked about in a while, but is always something good to think about, because I feel like as woodworkers, most of us probably progress through a similar path of being scared to death about finishing, finding one type of finish that offers pretty foolproof application, decent enough results, and that becomes our go-to finish for years and years until we want to try something else or see something else. And then we've dorked up a couple of projects in learning about it and then grow from there.
Yeah. Well, and so when I had suggested this topic, it was for a very particular reason.
Oh, yeah.
And it was to get an answer to a question. So it was very selfish.
Okay.
Because I am working on my self-imposed deadline, which I think we'll talk about in the shop update in a little bit and where we're sitting.
Right.
But as I'm looking at finishing, is it weird? So, yeah, I think you're right. I think everybody kind of gets into their routine finish, right? So, like, we have a finish we've used in the past on projects. It works well. It looks good. Let's keep using that. But I think different projects kind of require different finishes, or can require different finishes, depending on what your standard is. Okay. In this example, I'm building nightstands. They are going next to a sleigh bed that I built a number of years ago that was finished with some general finishes, Sealacell, and then I hit it with spray lacquer. Okay. Durable, easy to repair. Spray lacquer melts into itself. It burns into itself. Easy to touch up. And it looks pretty good, right? However, with this recent dining room table I built, my initial finish I did on that was just a straight hot, like smoking hot linseed oil bath, basically. Wiped that off. And then I ended up putting some wipe-on poly on it. Just because of heat marks I was getting and stuff on the top. But I'm thinking these nightstands are like the perfect application for that linseed oil. My wife and I aren't like, I know some people are, have a glass of water in your nightstand every night or a bottle of water or whatever. We don't do that necessarily. So I'm not concerned about water rings. I'm not concerned about marks. I'm wondering if this isn't the right application for that finish. But my question is, does that look weird then? If you have two projects sitting next to each other, I mean, this basically ends up being a bedroom set. Does it look weird having a different finish on the nightstands versus the bed? What do you guys think?
Yes. No,
Okay.
I'm just kidding.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
No, I think, I don't know. I mean, it would have to be
the spray lacquer is easier.
Yeah.
So
No, I don't, unless like the sheen is way different or the color is way different, it's probably fine and not very noticeable, I would think. But
Yeah, I think
That's just-
you're probably going to be fine with a different
Okay.
finish because, like John said, I think the sheen is probably going to be the bigger issue, and you'll probably end up with a very similar sheen anyway.
yeah, and I think so too. The more noticeable, in my opinion, might be the color difference because that bed is now almost 3 years old. It's lightened quite a bit because walnut gets lighter with age. So these are going to be much darker, I think. But yeah, so.
But
on
even
that
then,
note,
like
have
it's
you
only
guys-
going to be that way for a few years, and then those will even out. Those
Exactly.
will lighten up, and
They will, yeah.
they'll kind
so
of blend together.
on that note, have you guys ever put a finish on that just like is amazing to feel? Because that's the way I feel with this linseed oil finish. Like, don't make it weird, John. Don't
no,
make
I
it
was
weird.
thinking about that. What was it? You turned something and like did a wax
Oh,
finish
yeah.
on it, and like
Yeah.
you have it on your desk, and we're always like, "Ooh, it feels so nice," and like you're rubbing it on
rubbing
your
stick?
cheek. Yeah, I was thinking about that.
No. Well, yeah. So like this, and that's one of the things that I've heard in regards to the Thomas Mosier furniture is it's like you'll never touch a piece of furniture that feels like this because it goes through a very rigorous finishing process, which is basically sanding up to 600 grit,
Right.
a hot linseed oil finish, and then it's buffed out with steel wool and paste wax, basically. And it does like it feels like wood still, but it feels like the nicest finished wood you'll ever touch. And I found that with this linseed oil finish, and I hate to say it, but I think that is if something isn't going to come in contact with water or food, plates, I guess, hot plates, I think it's going to be my like go-to finish. I'll grab the bottle of it, but I've been using the linseed oil from Tried and True,
Oh, okay.
and it works well. But the other one that they have out that I've been using as the top is this stuff. It is the Tried and True Varnish oil. So it's basically, from my understanding, it is basically a linseed oil with like pine resin in it.
Okay.
So the resins give you a little bit more build and finish
Sure.
on top. So I think that's kind of my go-to finish now.
Okay.
It looks great. Now, I say that, and I finished turning something this morning that I'll show you guys in a little bit. John saw it, but that I have a different formula for turning, which there's no reason for, but I do. But what are your guys' standard go-to foolproof finishes?
Don't say spray booth.
I was gonna say spray booth. Yeah, I don't know. For me, it's just like I get to the end of the project, I'm getting kind of sick of it, and it's just like just take it to the spray booth and spray it. I want to be done.
Yeah.
it's foolproof. It's done, but like you were describing it's indestructible per se or whatever, but
Yep.
it's not. I mean, it looks great, looks fine, whatever, but it's not that hand rubbed finish. What you were describing of like how it looks and feels. I mean, it's done, it's finished, but it's not like, fine furniture look type of thing.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
and I think you have two different things. How does it look and how does it feel?
Sure.
Because the spray lacquer, which when we're talking about taking it in the spray booth, we have a large spray booth in our shop at the office that we always have a pressure pot full of pre-catalyzed lacquer. And it sprays on nice, sprays on even. 2 or 3 coats, you get a good build. It gives great color to almost everything.
Right.
And it dries really fast. Like you can do 3 coats in 2 hours, basically.
Yeah. We're really spoiled.
We are very spoiled. But for most of us, that's not practical at home.
Right.
Right.
So, Phil, what's yours?
I have a couple of projects in my house that I have gotten a finish on that I was amazed with, and I'm not entirely sure how I got there.
Yes, okay.
Because, one is my neighbor had rescued a desk from a company that he worked for, and it was one of those old, I don't know if it was like a school desk. It was wood, oak,
Okay.
about the size of the Nimitz aircraft carrier.
Okay, yeah.
And somebody so the desk had seen some use, kind of a standard office desk, and it had, in the company where it had been, somebody had glued down with like construction adhesive, like a big particle board top on it to make it bigger. And that had come off and had lifted some of the surface veneer in different places, and it was stained and whatever. And we picked it up, got it from our neighbors, and I rehabbed the whole desk and patched where the veneer had torn out. And the veneer was actually thick enough that I could go at it with a plane and level it.
Oh, wow.
And I bleached some of the black rings that were on it and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
And then I was in a boiled linseed oil kick for a while. And again, heated up the boiled linseed oil and then rubbed it in, and probably did like 6 or 8 coats or something like that, spread out over time. And then there was a couple of times when I had it in the office here, and it was warmish outside, probably in the 80s, and I pulled that top, set it outside on sawhorses in the sunshine. And now that thing is like buttery smooth. It
Nice.
looks great, feels delightful to touch, and is pretty hard too. So, and I don't remember now, it's been a while, if I put like General Finishes Seal-A-Cell over the top of it just to give a little varnishiness to it. But it's got great color. So that was kind of cool. Boiled linseed oil projects since then have gotten nowhere near that cool for me. Not sure why, because I feel like application-wise I've done a lot of the same thing. Then I have a side table that I made and a bed I made for one of my kids, both out of cherry, and I did water-based finish on them and got a super, super smooth finish on it. Like, that bed is just amazing. It's got a little green and green flavor to it, and so rounded edges. I took my time on things to make it look cool. But even now, that thing's been in use for almost 10 years, and it's in great shape. Finish feels nice. Whenever I'm in there, you kind of end up rubbing your hand along surfaces, and it has a great feel. And the same thing with the top of this one side table. Now I made another side table, exact same design, same material, same finishing schedule. The finish is okay, but it's not what I would call super cool.
Yeah. It's funny because I did the same thing. I built my oldest son's crib, 7 years ago, 8 years ago. And I did a Sam Malouf finish. I think Rockler sells like a Sam Malouf blend. It's basically like a wiping varnish for the most part. It's a linseed oil varnish blend. And that was the first big thing that I made out of walnuts. I mean, everything was sanded to 400 grit, and I had that thing hung up by wire in my parents' basement. because it was the only dust-free zone I had. I could let those fumes fly around. With a pregnant wife in the house, you couldn't do that.
Right.
So I was wiping that, and I had to have wiped on like 15 coats of that stuff, and it is just same thing. It's just silky smooth, and it stood up pretty well. There's a couple gnaw marks from a child standing there gnawing on the edge.
Right.
He found the one spot without the edge protector on it. But yeah, and then same thing. I've tried it on other things, and it just was lackluster. So I don't know what it was. And I think a lot of it has to do with humidity and temperature when you apply stuff, how fast it dries, what's going on. Are you doing outside while somebody's mowing their lawn?
Yeah,
that type of thing.
I also haven't kept detailed notes on it either, and I get to the point, like John said, where you just kind of want the project done. So,
true.
What kind of care did I take in surface prep, in application? I just don't remember. I just remember using the same products. It's the same materials, essentially the same table. And it's one of those things where I think that's where you become different, where you level up as a woodworker, is when you can do those things reliably instead of like, oh, cool, it turned out this time. What do you know? I'm going to go buy a lottery ticket.
Yeah.
Well, and that's some of this is what's your foolproof finish that you have mastered, I guess. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's why I feel myself leaning towards like the idiot proof finishes for one obvious reason is idiot finishing, which I feel like a lot of the wiping stuff just is that way, right? Yeah. Like wiping polys, the linseed oil that you're basically flooding it on and wiping it off. When I turn stuff, I use a sanding sealer first, so just a thin shellac, and then I use just some Danish oil, right?
Right.
And the Danish oil, you flood it on, let it sit for 15 minutes, wipe it off. It's about as easy as you can get, and it's almost impossible to get runs. You can get tacky areas if you don't get it all off, but it works well. So like when it comes to finishing, if you're doing a clear finish or even I don't stain anything personally, but like a stained finish, what's your guys' surface prep like? What do you usually sand up to? Do you vacuum? Do you tack cloth? What do you do?
Usually I'm doing a darker stain, so it's only sanding up to like 120, 150 at the most, because you get too much higher than that and it just won't accept the stain, and it won't darken up, it seems like. So I try to, not to sand it down too much and, get all the dust off, and like you said, tack cloth, blow it off, whatever it takes. So.
Sure. What about you, Phil?
I usually, because most of my finishes, if I'm working at home, will be with water base. So I'll go to probably 180 tops, and then maybe like 220 on end grain, just so I don't have like a weird absorption or something like that where you end up getting such a stark color difference. But a lot of times I'm either somewhere in there, I'm planing and or scraping, that I'll hand plane a surface, but then I'm inevitably going to have some kind of plane tracks or something on that. So I'll maybe sand those off with 220 or scrape it, and then just even out the sheen with something. I know there's going to be people who are going to say, like, you've already planed it, now you're dulling it back with sandpaper. Yeah, I get that, but I get an even surface. So there you go. So then I'll put on, a coat of water-based finish, and then sand that with either 220 or 320 before putting on a second coat, and then probably a third coat if it's going to be some kind of a wear surface. But, what I would call like secondary surfaces usually only get 2.
Yeah. See, and first of all, I'll say I hate water-based finishes. Simply for the fact there's 2 reasons. one, I hate how they raise the grain, which is funny because then I'll go before I finish sanding and I'll tell you in a minute I raise the grain. I don't know why. But I don't like that I like the color that oil finishes add.
Sure.
There are some water finishes that are phenomenal. We did some video with Old Masters and their Masters armor.
Right.
Which is a water-based outdoor finish. That stuff's actually phenomenal. Which would be great for an outdoor project. Not gonna put it on my table necessarily, even though you could.
Yeah.
So I know there's a lot of people that say, "Oh, I stopped sanding at 180," which I get. If you're spraying or putting a film finish on, that only makes sense because the film finish is gonna level out those scratches, and it doesn't really matter. For the stuff I've been doing as far as like the penetrating oils and the very, very thin hand rub stuff, I have been going up to 400 grit on all surfaces. So the end grain, I don't treat any differently than the face grain or edge grain. So I've been hitting everything with 400, up to 400. So I power sand with 180, 220, 320. And then my final 400 grit is hand sanding with a block in the grain direction. Does it do anything? Probably not, but it makes me feel better about it. And then in between the 320 and 400, I usually will wipe down with a damp rag and then sand back with 320 again, just to eliminate any raised fibers. And then I usually vacuum. Don't tell my wife, but we have like a shark vacuum that has a really nice soft bristle brush. I use that on whatever I'm vacuuming because the bristles are soft and they kind of pluck out the dust out of the grain.
Sure.
If it's a turning, I'll just grab the air hose and blow it off. But then I'm doing my finish. And linseed oil can smell. The tried and true stuff, it has no metallic dryers in it. It's just straight flax seed oil that has been heated up, like legitimately heated up to make it cure, to polymerize.
Yeah.
So I'll do that in my shop. If it is like a wiping poly or something like that, I usually will try to do that in the garage if I can.
Sure.
So if it's not super cold out, I don't know necessarily what I have my Minwax wiping poly here. It doesn't necessarily say it needs to be above a certain temperature to dry, but usually if it's below 60, I won't even try it.
Yeah.
So yeah, this doesn't say. So it's just it's funny to me because so here we go. It just says dry times are based on good ventilations, temperature of 77 degrees, and 50% humidity. So it is what it is. But it's funny because there are so many finishing products on or available in the marketplace that it's very easy to get overwhelmed.
Oh yeah.
Like even, myself, who is, I would consider myself more involved in the woodworking industry than most people, I get like, you kind of get that goggle eye look as you're like, oh my God, what do I need to buy? So that's why I always try to stick with what I know.
Yeah.
But there are a few finishes that I'd like to try, and I'd be interested to hear if you guys have any finishes that you want to try. I have no desire to have a piece of furniture that's French polished in my house, but I'd love to French polish something just to do it. Yeah, just to do it. I've heard a lot of stuff about Rubio Monocoat.
Like hard wax oil or whatever it's called.
Yeah, whatever it is, it's a one coat finish. It comes with colors. You can do different colors on it. There's a lot of people that really love Rubio Monocoat. I have never tried it, and it's an interesting one on how you apply it because you basically flood the surface and then you basically squeegee it, from my understanding, to level it out.
Yeah.
I never tried it, but I would like to try it at some point. I don't want to try it on a big project. So maybe like a magazine article project. We'll try it.
There you go.
Convince Mark and Chris to do it.
Yes.
So, but are there any finishes that you guys haven't tried, you'd like to try, or John just wants to dump stuff in the spray booth and hit it with lacquer?
No, yeah, I always see stuff like that it's like I want to try, but not on one of my projects. It's just like experiment with it or like try it out someplace. But it's like usually, like I said, I'm just trying to get stuff done if it's for me. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Trying to think if there's anything that I would want to try. I mean, I feel like I've dabbled
Phil,
in a bunch of stuff, but maybe
I know you
about the only thing would be
shellac.
Yeah, I don't know that I've mastered shellac either. I use it a lot, and I put it on in pretty thin coats. But again, it's one of those things where it's like, hey, this project turned out great. Hey, this one looks streaky and blotchy, and and I just can't get it to. It just doesn't feel like it's leveling or, that I'm getting a smooth finish on it at all.
Sure.
Yeah. So that would be one where I would love to develop a more confident competence with would be shellac. Probably another one would be dye stains, because there was a designer here, Kent Welsh, who loved using dyes. And he could do it reliably. And you read a bunch of stuff by all the finishing gurus, and they're like, well, dyes are so much easier to use than, oil stains and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, not in my experience, So I would like to know how to get success with a dye. That would be kind of interesting. Though I don't often alter the color of pieces. But, sometimes you're working with a existing piece, like that radio cabinet that I've been working on, and I want to have colors of parts be related.
Yeah. Well, I'd say you're definitely better at shellac than I am, because I always end up with like streaky, sticky messes, and I just hate it.
Yeah, there is a learning curve. I will give you that.
Yeah, I will say using the Dacron brushes seems to work best. Right. For shellac, I picked that up from you. And you're right, dyes are an interesting one, because it's an interesting way to add color, and they're generally not as light fast as a stain, right? So they can fade over time, but you can get a lot richer color. One of the few things I've actually finished. I've done some coloring with dyes as far as like bizarre colors, like you're working on a quilted maple platter and you want to do a blue rim on it, but you want it to be really streaky, so you do black dye first, sand it back, then you do blue dye. And I've done some coloring like that. That's really fun. I actually used it's really dusty, this guy from season 13, 14, 12? Season 13, I think. 12? Oh my lord, was it 12?
Yes,
maybe 12. I don't know. I did use a dye on this. This is a little smartphone speaker we built on the show. I used a dye on this, and it turned out beautiful. I love it.
Cool.
But that's a good one. I would agree. I would like to mess around with dyes more. So interesting. Alcohol based though, not water based.
See, and that would be water based for me, because every time I've tried to use, we've done a couple of shop projects where we used like either an alcohol or a lacquer based dye, and it felt like you put it on, it's instantly dry. Welcome to lap marks and streakiness.
Yeah. Well, Dennis Voles, one of our former designers, I picked up a good one from him. It was on his, I think it was his East Lake table he did.
Oh, yeah.
He applied the dye with a spray bottle, alcohol dye with a spray bottle.
Oh, okay.
I'm like, that's an interesting one. It's basically spraying it.
Yeah.
It gives you good, even coverage. All right, not a bad idea. So
cool.
Yeah. So interesting. So that's all I had for finishing, but I just thought it was an interesting topic because people always have questions about it.
Yeah, and I think part of what's problematic with finishing is it's really easy to get hung up on either the product itself or a specific application method or tools for application.
Yeah.
And to forget that it is a process. And the more you can think of it in terms of a big picture, the better success you're going to have. You know, like,
Yeah, for sure.
I don't follow my own advice often, but when I'm on top of a project and I start pre-finishing before I get to assembly, the project's going to look better, you know. And in the same vein, you can have a great looking finish and it's mostly because of your surface prep care and consideration than it is necessarily the product itself. Because I would contend that you could take shellac, water-based finish, general, you know, some kind of a wipe-on poly, and spray lacquer, put those projects side by side, and you would be hard-pressed to know which one is which.
Yeah,
if you
I think so.
As long as they're executed all of them with care, and the appropriate care for the project, you know. You know, because I'll go back to Kent Welsh. Like, he would use Seal-A-Cell or Armor Seal or whatever, and his projects looked outstanding, the ones that he did. And I'm like, what did you use on this? And he's like, just the Armor Seal. And it's like, really? He goes, yeah, but I actually care about putting it on, you know. So he put 5 or 6 coats on and have rubbed out each coat, you know, instead of just being like, well, I just got this off the belt sander, you know, so I'm going to plop on a couple of coats of finish and wonder why it doesn't look great.
Yeah, that's definitely the thing with finishing is, like, you definitely have to take care and, you know, being very careful in your finishes and not rushing it, because that's usually when you get runs and, you know, and build up in corners, and it makes it harder as you're doing it. Makes it take even longer than if you just would have taken care to, you know, let each coat dry, you know, pretty well and rub it out and sand it. And so
I will say, though, and I know I've said this before, I love painting projects. Because I'll tell you what, not that the table saw cart I just painted this week looked janky, but it was a conglomerate of whatever scraps we had around the shop. It had MDF, it had ash plywood, it had hardwood ash. I mean, it just had everything. And it looked janky, and the ash we had was kiln dried, and it was super chippy, so there's chip out. And instead of mounting the top from underneath with screws, I just drilled right through the top and filled them with spackle. Seal that thing with spray lacquer and then paint on some Rust-Oleum hammered finish with 3 coats with a spray gun. That thing looks phenomenal.
Right.
Like, I was super happy with how the paint laid on it. It looks good. And that's one thing that sometimes you have an issue with as you are painting hardwood is you can see the grain, and ash has a very pronounced, hey, it's grain, you know. Nope, you paint it on heavy enough, that grain disappears. So I like it. And it's oil-based, so it doesn't raise the grain like latex would. So.
All right, then.
That's your finishing tip of the day. Paint it on heavy.
Just paint everything with paint it on heavy with oil-based paint.
Paint it on thick.
Yeah, as long as you're spraying. If it's brushing or I'll spray paint every day of the week.
All right, that's fair.
Yeah. So should we do a project update on how we're doing?
We should do a project update.
All right, you start.
Okay, I have a radio cabinet that I'm rehabbing for people who haven't been following along. And I'm to the point now where yesterday I rabbited the back legs and put a groove on the underside of the top to accept the back panel, which I did out of some rift-sawn oak plywood that I had. But I have the grain running side to side. And then I painted it with the General Finishes milk paint It's like an acrylic matte finished paint in white, because I wanted to just lighten up the inside of the cabinet. And I installed that this morning, and it looks outstanding. So what I'm down to now is I put a second coat of stain on the door edging that I put on. So door edging, and then the back panels of the door, back sides of the door, I guess, to make it match the kind of the aged cherryish walnutty color that the rest of the case is. So once I have that done, probably tomorrow or Friday, I'll put on a few coats of finish on those edging pieces, and those will be ready. I did all the fitting and installing, so they're basically ready to go right on the hinges when I'm done with that. So once that's done, it'll be putting on a catch, magnetic catch on the doors, and then I'll be golden. So.
And remind me, is this for all the Nat Geos? Or is this what was in them?
Yeah, it held National Geographics from the early to mid 60s when I was a kid. So I learned a lot of archaic knowledge as a child when we'd go to visit Grandma, and I'd have little to do other than sit out in the sun porch and read old National Geographics.
Solid.
Yeah. So
sounds like a great way to spend a childhood, in my opinion.
It was, actually. I have a special place in my heart for National Geographic simply because of that. So.
Yep. Awesome.
But
so what are the projects you're going to start?
I'm starting we did a patio planter for this issue of the magazine. And we had one of our shop craftsmen had put together like a prototype or misread the plans and made like a smaller version. So he had all these extra staves for that. And so I took those, and I'm going to do that as a birthday gift.
Nice.
Coming up. So, yeah. Cool. That's what I got going on.
John?
As you guys know, I'm back into that cabinet that we've been talking about over the last year. Hitting it pretty hard. So I can't remember if we mentioned it on the podcast last week or if I just mentioned it to you guys, but I went back and I had modeled that in Inventor, that cabinet, and I went back to see when I had started this project, and the date on that file was March 17th, 2007. So 13 years ago.
Baby.
On this project. So got the drawers all put together yesterday and sprayed, and working on the doors and side panels, and the end is in sight.
All right.
So
cool.
Yeah. So hopefully get this done and move on with my life. Get started on the next long-term project.
March of 2007, I was so excited about my high school graduation coming up in 3 months. Mm-hmm. Just saying,
my 2-year-old son was enjoying being an only child at the time, 2007.
Right.
Awesome.
So 3 kids later after that.
That might be the longest project I've heard of somebody working on. Other than like a boat or a cabin in the woods or something huge, you know? That's awesome.
I don't know.
But you know what? We were the inspiration for you to finish it up.
Yes, that's right. Or my wife.
You're welcome, Sarah.
Wanting to sell our house and move. This was what has been preventing it.
That's awesome.
So I'll get it done, and then she'll want to sell the house, and somebody else will be able to enjoy this cabinet.
Okay.
Nice. And then you'll have to build a new one.
Right.
The next house.
Think about how much you'll be able to mark up the value of the house once this cabinet's done.
Right? Exactly. Right. Double the price.
Custom furniture.
Yes.
Yep. So she's been looking at houses, and it's like, oh well, I like this house, but if we get it, we could do this and this. And like, if we would get another house, I'm not doing anything. I did it to this house.
Yeah.
And look where that got me.
Right.
moving.
Right. So.
Yeah, you'd have so many projects for retirement.
Exactly. Yeah. That's what I'm saving all this stuff for.
Right.
Retirement.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Good idea.
Yeah. Awesome.
So.
Well, my nightstands are. Let's see if I can turn my camera. Somebody asked about this the other day. There's one sitting on the workbench.
All right.
Right now, the other one's on the floor behind the workbench. Dovetails are all cut. Mitered dovetails, mitered through dovetails, so that was fun. They went together beautifully. I was super happy with how they went together. And right now, I am gluing up a bunch of pegs in them because all the miters have cherry pegs that kind of lock the miters together. And there's some dividers that go in between there's a cubby underneath and then a drawer above, and there's a divider in there. And there's a pair of cherry pegs that lock that divider into kind of a angled dado. So I got to get the last couple pegs installed maybe today, and then I'll be able to sand everything flush, get the divider in, and then it's just knocking out a couple drawers. So I'm looking pretty good for next week, I think.
All right.
Yeah. That project started a year ago, so it was pretty good. But I also spent a couple of days in the shop. I knocked out a Hickory Bowl that I had been working on. I roughed it out a couple of months ago. I tried something on this one. This is for a friend of mine. It was his hickory tree, actually, that was knocked down in the dredge. It was a huge, huge shagbark hickory. It was like 39, 40 inches in diameter. It was massive. But I wanted to bead the outside of it, so I cut all these little beads on there, and then I scorched it. The problem is that the scorching did not get down in between the beads, so I'm going to have to figure out something to do about it, because I don't like the looks of it right now. So this may be a flat black milk paint finish on the outside, and then just a nice inside. And then yesterday, we were in the office for some stuff and had a little bit of free time, so I knocked out a nice little cherry platter.
Cool.
Over the lunch period. Yeah, so this was another reason I kind of wanted to talk about finishing, because I was doing some finish on this guy. So I've decided that I'm going to start selling these bad boys to hopefully fund a lathe for my shop. So
there you go.
There's a lot of bowls and platters and stuff in my future, because my wife told me if I want to buy the lathe that I want for my shop, that I have to fund it myself. She's not putting up with my antics anymore.
Putting up with your antics anymore.
Yeah.
So speaking of antics, on that other bowl, on the Hickory Bowl, were you listening to Michael Jackson when you were detailing the outside?
I beat it. No, I was not. Wow, Phil. Mm-hmm.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that one. No, I was not. But so yeah. But now that I've decided I'm gonna start selling some of this stuff, it's like, how do I decide? I know we've talked about pricing before, but like, it's like this guy, right? And there's people have formulas, like Turners have that same question, like, how do I price stuff? So it's like a lot of guys are like, oh, take the diameter times the height times 2.5, and that gives you a good base price. Which
shouldn't pi be in there somewhere? I feel like
pi should be in there somewhere. Yes. So maybe it's diameter times height times pi. Maybe that's what I should do. But it's like this is a nice piece of cherry. I know the tree it came from. It's like maybe I just list it at like, I'm not okay selling it at $60, but maybe at $100 I'm okay selling it. You know what I mean? Maybe I like it too much to sell it for less than that. I don't know. So it might be one of those. Throw it on an Etsy store and see if it sells.
There you go.
So yeah. So I don't know. It's a weird thing. So, but I'm gonna go into production Turner mode after I knock out these nightstands.
There you go. Make a bunch of tool handles.
In my dining room. Yeah. My dining room table chairs are just gonna wait.
Yeah.
Those will be the 10-year down the road project for me.
There you go. You got to have one of those. Something to look forward to.
Yeah.
All right, to wrap things up, podcast that we did last year following the Iowa derecho. Logan, you were talking about your emptying out your grandpa's place and all of his fishing lure making supplies that now reside with you. In response to that, we had a reader, a gentleman by the name of Alan Eisen, who sent us a crankbait that he made.
Yes.
And
oh my god!
So it's got a little cove at the top, a couple of hooks.
Yep.
So he writes, "Gentlemen, I've enclosed a bait that I made over the pandemic. It was good therapy. After making a dozen, 4 at a time, I moved on to other projects. I sent 2 to Florida and 2 to Washington State to grandsons. Haven't heard any results as yet. He's got a boat that's a block and a half away, so it's easy for him to fish. And he got plenty of bass strikes last summer, but no fish in the boat. Casted the first one enough that I pulled the eye out. Luckily, I epoxied it back in, and all baits now are glued in solid. The bait is fashioned after a flatfish and lazy Ike, and it's made out of basswood with hardware from Cabela's." So, and then he talks a little bit about this process on there. He said, "It casts just fine, dives 12 to 18 inches, and wiggles like a minnow, and floats when stopped. The beauty of the bait is the excitement that I get when fish hit it, and I know it's my own creation." So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
This is phenomenal. Like, we have the USS Mark Royal down at Todd's place still.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be a video that happens.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So
this is going to be amazing.
I'll put photos of it and Al's letter up on the show notes page at woodsmith.com. So that's just a reminder to everybody who's working on projects along with us, whether it's from Woodsmith or not. We'd love to see what you're making. You can send those to us at woodsmith@woodsmith.com. Feel free also to leave any questions, comments, and smart remarks that you have on our Facebook page or on the YouTube channel, where you can see what we're talking about on our podcasts. Otherwise, go to woodsmith.com/podcast to check out this episode and all the other ones. Thanks again, everybody, for joining us for the Shop Notes Podcast, and we'll see you again next week. Bye, everybody.
This episode of Shop Notes Podcast is brought to you by Woodsmith Plans. You'll find nearly 1,000 plans covering everything that you'd want to build. From furniture projects to gift projects, kitchen accessories, workshop projects, and jigs and more. Find your next project at woodsmithplans.com.